At the end of the road in the small, quiet town of Willowdale, there stood an old, abandoned house that everyone avoided. The locals whispered stories of the strange noises that could be heard coming from within its walls, and the eerie feeling that lingered around the property. The house was a menacing figure at the end of the street, casting a shadow over the entire town. But one day, a group of curious teenagers decided to explore the house and uncover its mysteries. As they approached the house, the air grew colder and the silence became deafening. The house was a grand Victorian-style mansion, but it was clear that no one had lived there for years. The front door was creaky and barely hanging on its hinges. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, the floors were littered with dust and debris, and the furniture was tattered and rotting. As they made their way through the first floor, they stumbled upon a locked door. Without hesitation, one of the teenagers kicked it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading up to the second floor. As they climbed the stairs, the air grew even colder, and the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. When they reached the top of the stairs, they were met with a long hallway with several doors. They cautiously opened the first door and were greeted with a room filled with old toys and dusty books. But as they were about to leave, they heard a faint whisper coming from the corner of the room. They turned around to see a little girl, her eyes black as coal, staring at them with a sinister grin on her face. The teenagers were frozen with fear, unable to move or speak. Suddenly, the girl vanished into thin air. Shaken, they moved on to the next room, only to find a blood-stained bed and an old diary. The diary belonged to a woman who had lived in the house many years ago. As they read through its pages, they learned of the woman's descent into madness after her daughter mysteriously disappeared. Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching from down the hall. As they turned to run, they were confronted by a ghostly figure, the woman from the diary. Her eyes were filled with rage as she charged towards them, her piercing screams echoing through the halls. The teenagers ran for their lives, but the woman's ghost was relentless, chasing them through the dark hallways and up and down the stairs. They finally made it back to the front door, only to find it locked from the outside. As the ghostly figure closed in on them, the teenagers huddled together in terror, waiting for their inevitable fate. But then, as suddenly as it had begun, the ghostly presence disappeared, leaving the teenagers alone in the cold, eerie silence of the abandoned house. They never spoke of what happened in that house again, but the experience haunted them for the rest of their lives. The house remained untouched, a dark and menacing presence at the end of the street, a reminder of the horrors that lurked within. The teenagers learned that sometimes it's better to leave the past buried and untouched.